This episode of Moist Meter brought to you by GODSLAP. Issue 3 is out right now at godslapbook.com. You can find links below in the description. Go check it out.
Initiating moisture.
Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're taking a look at Resident Evil 4 Remake, a very long anticipated title and one that I've been looking forward to as well. I think these Resident Evil remakes have been absolutely phenomenal. In fact, the second one is my favorite in the entire franchise. So, big shoes to fill here, though I do want to say Resident Evil 3 Remake is definitely the stinkiest of the bunch, but not because the game itself is bad, it's just like a 40-minute game. It's like playing a demo on the Xbox Live Marketplace. That game was criminally short. But aside from that blemish, they've been absolutely crushing this, so I had high expectations of number 4, and I'm happy to say that they were met. I didn't remember beating the original Resident Evil 4. I know I played it a few times, but I don't think I ever actually beat it. My brain was too small as a young toddler. I couldn't quite figure out how to complete the game, I guess, because I really didn't remember shit that happened past like the midpoint of number 4 here. So a lot of this was kind of just fresh and new to me, which I really appreciated. So I can't really compare a lot of what happens in the remake to the original, though I can say all of the quality of life improvements, such as all of the gameplay changes, are beyond welcomed. I accept those with open arms and a smile on my face. The gameplay in Resident Evil 4 Remake is super smooth and extremely fun. I think this is by far the best combat the franchise has ever had. Everything is silky smooth like my ass with powder on it. Everything works really well, flows nicely, and it's even pretty punishing. Even on standard mode, if you make a mistake, you will get slapped. Especially when there's like 2 or 3 enemies nearby. They'll lunge at you, they'll fucking dodge your shit like they're seeing into the future. It's pretty refreshing that it's not just like baby easy even when you just play through on normal. I know hardcore is absolutely like the ideal way to play, but I just kind of wanted to relax and enjoy the experience, which I did. So I played through my first playthrough on standard, and I had a great time doing it. The combat never got old, and it was always fun to strategize around like what kind of build I wanted to run, even though that's not the right word for it, because you don't really make a build. It's just deciding what you want to pour all your money into for upgrades. So I did the classic Red 9, so I boosted the fuck out of the Red 9, and then I did rifle and knife. And that's kind of what I ran with for the majority of the game. But the fun of Resident Evil 4 Remake is there's a lot more you can do as well, because they introduced these things called charms and cases that have special perks. So like, for example, the gold case, which I had. That's a case that gives you a bonus to money that you could find in the world, whereas the standard case gives you a bonus to handgun ammo you can find in the world. And then through the charm system, you unlock these tokens that are earned through playing mini games nearby the stranger that's selling all of this. So nearby the stranger, the merchant, you go downstairs in this elevator and you play these shooting gallery mini games, and the better you do, the more tokens you get, and you can spin those tokens on almost like a fucking gotcha game here. And you roll for these charms which attach to your case, and they have all kinds of rarities: common, rare, epic, and legendary. I got 2 epics and a legendary from doing all of the mini games, and a lot of dog shit. Some of them are truly worthless, but I had some bangers. So one of them, the legendary, gave me plus 8% running speed, which allowed me to dodge and evade more enemies and could plan out some better attacks. Another one I got was like a 5% discount on all weapon upgrades, and another one was a plus 20% chance to crit with melee. Like, it's just fun things that make the gameplay a little bit more deep. They add a little bit of depth to it, and I appreciated that. The gameplay was just super fun top to bottom. I think they absolutely fucking crushed it here. Now, moving on from gameplay, let's talk about the story. So, I didn't really remember shit from the Resident Evil 4 story, so most of this is new to me. And I'm gonna just be honest and upfront. I don't notice any changes from what I remember in the OG Resident Evil. A lot of the things that were there are still present here, such as the fucking lake monster and all of that. It just seems like they added more to it, like certain boss fights or certain characters, like Luis, for example, has more screen time than the original, I think. At least going off my memory. So it's just everything that I've remembered from OG Resident Evil 4 is still present here, but it does feel like they turned down the goofiness. They set that goofy dial from goofy to silly. instead of like leaning into the campiness, it seems like they kind of shied away from it and made it more serious to take itself a little more seriously. And I think that's kind of detrimental because some of the charm of Resident Evil 4 was the campy B-movie feel to a lot of what happens. And that's definitely not here. This is a game that is taking itself super seriously, and when they try to make a joke, it's not very good. A lot of their jokes fall super fucking flat here. Whereas I remember in the OG one, such as like if you tried to get like a look at Ashley's panties, she'd be like, "You pervert." Like that kind of shit is nothing big, but it's not here. It just added like a little bit of charm and silliness to it. Excuse me, goofiness, because that's a level above silly that I just think helped elevate the experience. But it's not a big deal that it's not here, but it is something that I took notice of. But aside from that, it seems like the DNA from the OG Resident Evil 4 is still intact here, just expanded upon and fleshed out a bit more, which I do think is good overall. It seems like they added a lot more lore and a lot more character depth in this game, and it works pretty well for the most part, except for, like I said, the comedy doesn't really land. So I have no real complaints about the story or anything like that. I think visually the game looks fucking fantastic. I'm a huge fan of how these remakes have been presented. The presentation behind these I think is stellar. So there's a lot of like really action heavy moments in these cutscenes where it's clear that they're self-aware with how over the top it is. So for example, during a knife fight with a boss you encounter, you're just doing this like almost Wing Chun like movements and you're like slapping at each other with a knife in your hand and the camera's going kind of wacko mode on it. It's just fun. And then there's a helicopter pilot that you meet at some point who's helping you out and he's like, "Drinks are on me, buddy." And then all of a sudden, a couple zombie bugs hit the helicopter, and he's like, "Oh shit!" and blows up. And then in the flames walks the big bad. It's super cool, like in the silliest, most self-aware way possible. And it just looks beautiful. The visuals are great, and the art direction is fantastic. So I just really don't have many complaints about the game at all, really. I guess if I had to like really start nitpicking, I'd say the puzzles are pretty brain dead. I don't know if that's because I played on standard mode. I don't know if the puzzles change. But I swear to God, some of these made me feel like I was back in elementary school on my fucking toy dinosaur learning about the ABCs. It was so stupid, fit the rectangle shape into the rectangle hole half the time. So I don't really know why even bother putting those puzzles there in the first place when they're that simple. I imagine they might change in higher difficulties, but I'm not positive since I haven't done another playthrough yet. But I just wanted to point that out. Not a big deal, just a little bit of a nitpick. And another thing that is a bit of a nitpick, it is actually gameplay related. It seems like there's a bit of a buffer system, so from time to time, when I was engaged in like a pretty intense fight with multiple enemies, I try to do multiple movements, but only a couple of them would register, and then the other ones would register later. So for example, if I wanted to ADS and then I wanted to crouch, I would do both inputs, but I might do them too quickly, so what would end up happening is I'd ADS, and then it'd stick there for like a full second before the crouch comes, when what I wanted was to ADS and then crouch to cancel out of it, to get out. So sometimes things would just hang there for a minute, and I don't know if it's because I was doing too many inputs too quickly, but it felt a little clunky in moments like that, though it wasn't very often. It's just during like a really intense fight when I'm trying to do multiple movements, or if I'm going into the inventory to pick up a grenade that I don't have on my like actual, shortcut wheel. When I hit equip, there'd be like a full second or second and a half where I have to put away my gun and then I'm making 2 additional movements before the grenade enters my hand. So it just felt a little unresponsive sometimes, but I don't know if that's just because I was inputting things like an absolute fucking coked out madman during the intense moments. So not a big deal because it didn't happen often anyway, but something I felt I might as well point out. Overall, though, I just don't have many real complaints for Resident Evil 4 Remake. I really enjoyed pretty much every single minute of it. Plugging it into the moist meter, I'm giving it a nice clean 90%. I fucking loved it. I think they did another great job here. And this is a much longer game. This is like, I think it took me 12, 13 hours to beat, something like that. So this does not suffer from the same problem Resident Evil 3 Remake had, where it was too short. This one feels just right, and there's even more content coming to it pretty soon, as I understand it. Plus, multiple playthroughs and, unlimited ammo shit to strive for, charms. There's just a lot of replayability to it, so very, very satisfied with Resident Evil 4 Remake, and yeah, that's about it. As most of you know, we started our own comic book series called GODSLAP. Everyone who's read GODSLAP so far has unanimously agreed that it's the best comic ever produced, and GODSLAP is well on its way to becoming the biggest name in all of comics, overthrowing Marvel within the next 5 years, according to recent scientific projections that I'm pulling out of my ass. It's a passion project created by myself, Jackson, Danny, and Matt, and we brought in an industry veteran named Aubrey Sitterson to help write it with us, and we're extremely proud of what we've created. Issue 1 and 2 are already out, and Issue 3 came out today, as of right now. Issue 3 is available at GODSLAPbook.com, and per usual, this is the standard cover, but we also have 2 limited edition variants, which will only exist until they're sold out, and they'll never be reprinted. So they're available at GODSLAPbook.com.